Well, it's just me today. John Doss is not here. Camryn Justice here with News 5 Cleveland with the Browns halftime live. I can't even muster up the words to describe that first half of football for the Browns. What is there to say? The score doesn't do what that first half was justice. It's 7-3, Washington on top after a drive that is really what we have to break down here. That final drive was absolutely brutal. There is no way around it. There is no other way to describe it. That drive was unbelievable. 21 plays, 96 yards. The Commanders took up over 11 minutes of the clock on that drive alone to score a touchdown to put them ahead. The defense, to their credit, has gotten a couple takeaways, and that is what you're looking for. They talk about it all the time about how, the defense and then the takeaways, they come in bunches and they pile on. And so you get one, Denzel Ward's out there, you get one, that's great. You get another Grant Delpit, that's great. But then you have a drive like that, and it just shows how dejected this team is. And at this point, right, we know they are not playing for playoff contention, but they are playing to win, and they are playing to get this thing in order. And maybe that's what we're seeing on offense. We gotta talk about this offense right now. Deshaun Watson, 3 for 8. There was that really, really strange play where he scrambled back and then he looked lost, and then he got the ball off and then passed it to Jack Conklin. And it's very strange, the offense, what's happening here with having Deshaun Watson, run draws, having him in the shotgun. Nick Chubb has been phenomenal. He's got 5 carries for 68 yards. He's working when you're giving him the ball. That has to change. And maybe this is a lot about getting Deshaun up to speed and trying out new things, because, again, they are not playing for the playoffs. There is no postseason ahead of them. And these last 2 games are what you have. You got a full year of Deshaun Watson in 2023. He is your quarterback, whether you agree with it or not, whether you're liking what you're seeing or not. Deshaun Watson is the starting quarterback for this Cleveland Browns team for years to come. They paid him $230 million guaranteed. They need him to be what they need him to be, that elite quarterback that he was in Houston. And right now you're not getting that from him. So maybe that's what Stefanski's doing out here with some of these play calls, is experimenting, but it is not great. And that's why you have 3 points on the board. You had the potential to be up. So you had a 6-7 game, could have had another field goal. Taking it off the board was a choice. I know that they always value touchdowns over field goals. 7 points is greater than 3. And in this situation, it's like, you got to win, but it's hard to make excuses. Meanwhile, Carson Wentz for the Commanders, 7 points on the board in that drive, that should not have happened. A lot of it wasn't on him, but the fact that he's under center, you've got Commanders fans loudly cheering for Heineke out there because Carson Wentz has been so bad. 6 for 10, 2 interceptions. That's those Browns takeaways. But it's just one of those games where you're trying to break this down, and it is exactly what you're seeing. It is a riddled offense with woes and issues and weird choices. And maybe that's experimenting. Maybe it's just still not clicking for Deshaun Watson. We will see. At the end of the day, what the Browns are looking to do in this game, in the next game, is to get this team together, to get this team on board with the same offensive game plan. And they have a lot of figuring out to do on defense. We know that. But offensively, I think it might be a lot of experimenting, and it's not going to be fun to watch. Listen, Robert, I know it's not a science class. It's not a science class. But at this point, what else do you do? What else can you see from here? And there might be changes. I know a lot of things right here. Pass routes on Stefanski. Robert wants to fire the coach. Al, you never take points off the board. These are all choices. Absolutely. that you question. I think that last drive is a big question, another big question mark. There's been question marks on defense the entire season, but that last drive, 21 plays, 11 minutes, 96 yards. That's just lackluster. That's inexcusable. And that's going to be something that they look at because you can't excuse it. Chuck, you're right. Browns averaging 15 points per game in the last 4.5 games. Not good. They aren't putting points on the board. It's just not something that they're doing. This offense has become stagnant since Deshaun Watson took over from Jacoby Brissett. That's a big adjustment. That's something that they are continuing to deal with. His week 1 was week 13. And that's not an excuse. That's just the reality of it. But at this point, you've got this game and you got the next one to get him on board because you can't have this rust. You can't have this him figuring out the offense going into next year. Next year is what it's all about. It's always about next year. I know that's not fun to hear. No one wants to hear there's always next year. But at this point with no playoffs, that's what this is about. So you have a full year of Deshaun Watson. Next year, you can't have him coming out here and doing this and looking like this and struggling. Listen, Morgan, why are the Browns so bad? It's a question that we all want answered. That's the question we've all been asking. And here we are. And they don't have answers. I mean, we're trying to get pinpoint. There's not one thing in particular. There's a lot of different things. There's some injuries. There are really big holes, gaping holes in the defensive line and that interior. Defensive tackle is a position that they are going to have to look at. There's some linebackers stepping up today, and that's promising, but they've had a ton of injuries to that corp, and that's something they'll have to address. The safety situation, Grant Delpit playing very well today, but there's still a ton of question marks there. And then you've got young corners like MJ Emerson. He's played well. There's still some moments out there for him. Greg Newsome's trying to fill in the slot. These are things that it's growing pains. And at this point, it's all about figuring it out and trying to go into next year with momentum. Yeah, John brings up a good point. When Watson scrambled, linemen stood and watched him. The offensive line has been something of a major concern, to be honest. I mean, they started off one of the strongest points of this Browns team, this whole roster, that offensive line. There's been injuries to the center position. Nick Harris goes down, Ethan Posick steps up, and he plays elite. Then he goes down, and Yelda Froholt steps in. Wyatt Teller goes down and is hurt for a while. Jack Conklin's coming back and playing from that injury that took him out last season. It doesn't look the same. That's not to mention Jed Wills going through those growing pains himself. And the offensive line was the strength, and now they struggle at times. And you can see it, and it happens, and that's where we're at here. Steven is right. Very lackluster performance by the Browns so far. That's the best way to describe this first half of the game is lackluster. I mean, it is what it is. And I know a lot of people are kind of checked out, but the Browns can't be checked out. There's not a playoff contention to play for, but you are still playing for the fans and for yourselves and for the rookies. It's tough. John says bad coaching. And that's something that they're going to look at. A lot of people in the office and a lot of fans going to be looking at some changes. Kevin Stefanski is a big part of Deshaun Watson and the plan with him. This is obviously an unfortunate look right now. I think that's something that they have to address, and they'll have to look at it and evaluate it more. But this is the future with Deshaun Watson. It was one of the reasons that Deshaun Watson is in Cleveland is because the offense that Kevin Stefanski laid out for him was enticing. $230 million guaranteed. Also a big reason why he's in Cleveland. But I think you need to see promise in it. And so that's not just something you can give up on. I do think that there will be a lot of eyeballs looking at these coaches and these coordinators and seeing what changes will be made. That's the point you're at in the season. You got one more game after this. You got a second half to turn it around and maybe see, but I think it's a lot about playing with what you got, and that's what we're seeing here. Deshaun Watson has to have a better second half, though. He's got to start stepping it up. You've got to see something from him, and that offensive line has to help him along. You know how you help Deshaun Watson? You run play action. You get Nick Chubb more involved. You don't put it all on him because at the end of the day, he comes out here 3 for 8. It's been sacked. This is just the offensive line is not protecting him. You've got to get him in a place where he's comfortable. So give Nick Chubb the ball some more. Give Nick Chubb the ball some more. Robert, listen, we appreciate you. We appreciate you too. Allowing us to vent every week. Vent away. This is where the point of the season has led. You can vent. You can get your frustrations out. James is doing it now. He thinks Deshaun Watson will never be good. These are the things that fans are going to do. This is where we're at in the season. So here we are. We've got one more half and another game to go left in the 2022, now 2023 season. You can only hope that this year upcoming is a better performance than the Browns have given, but still a chance to turn this thing around and stay in it. Commanders only up less than a score. Browns can turn this around, maybe capitalize, get another defensive takeaway and capitalize it. Here we are. You're back in it. Offense can put some points on the board. It's not been promising so far, but again, you're back in it. This is the time for Watson and the offense and Stefanski and Nick Chubb and all of them, the offensive line. Turn it around, get some points on the board, help your defense who have gotten you takeaways, gotten the ball back in your possession. Help them out. And we'll end with this. John, wrong scheme for Watson. This is a whole new system for him. He is learning. I think they see a lot of potential in how he could operate under it. Now, if they can get him there, that remains to be seen. But that's what these last couple games are for. So we will see you in the second half. Kickoff is here. Thanks for joining the Browns Halftime Live. Can't say it. Browns Halftime Live. We will catch you next week. Hopefully John Doss will feel better then. Thanks for watching, guys. Catch you next week. Enjoy the second half.